It is me. I am in my house in Vancouver as I film this. I didn't film too much when I was in Ottawa. I did get some clips, as you just saw. I was only there for less than 48 hours once I actually touched down in Ottawa. And a lot of it was just spending time with my friend, and we had one full day where we explored downtown Ottawa, which I did get a couple of clips, I think, of. We saw Parliament House, and we walked the streets, and we went to a market, which was so fun, but I didn't get to film too much as I just wanted to really be present with her, and we had lots to catch up on. But I thought I would jump on at the end of this video just to talk a little bit about my trip, my short trip to Ottawa. So it was, for those of you who don't know, Vancouver is the west side of Canada, and Ottawa is the other side, on the east side. So it takes a while to get there. I had a flight to Toronto, which was 4.5 hours, and then from Toronto I took a 1.5 hour flight to Ottawa. So 2 days were pretty full on with travel. The flights were pretty good. I felt very lucky that even though I didn't choose my seats, but I got put at, of course I got put in the last row, and when I looked them up on my phone, it showed that I was going to be in the middle between people. But luckily, in each case, there was a spare seat next to me, so I could just move across so that the person that I was sitting next to, we had a gap between us to kind of spread out and not be so close. So the flights were really good. They were long. Actually, being in Ottawa, it is so fun. I've only ever really seen British Columbia and kind of Vancouver, Lower Mainland. That's mostly all I've experienced. So I thought it was so cool to see the other side of Canada in a completely different province, in a different part of Canada. And you could definitely tell that Ottawa is completely different to Vancouver. A couple of the differences that I noticed was there's just so much rich architecture in downtown Ottawa that there isn't so much in downtown Vancouver. For those of you who don't know, Ottawa is Canada's capital, so there's a lot of Parliament buildings, a lot of historical buildings there, and it was just so cool to really experience that cool architecture. And I loved just walking down the street and just seeing all these magnificent buildings. It's definitely felt like I was, transported back in time a little bit, and they were just so beautiful, all the details. Another thing that is really different is Ottawa is right near Quebec, which is, from my understanding, primarily French speaking. So a lot of the signs and everything are in French, which isn't the case here so much in Vancouver, but I saw stop signs that were in French, and there were a lot more French speaking people. And yeah, it was kind of cool to experience that, and hearing too, because I may be completely wrong, English and French I think are the most commonly spoken languages in Canada, so it was cool to go to a place and hear that and recognize that. We went to downtown Ottawa, and like I said, we walked through the market. I got to have a beaver tail, which is a really delicious pastry. And I remember having one when I first came to Canada like 10 years ago, but of course I had to have another one, and it was amazing. It's kind of just a pastry with like cinnamon and I think sugar on top, but loved it, so good. Another really cool thing that I did in Ottawa was visit Parliament House. It is currently under construction, but what is really cool is that my friend who I visited, her brother works in the government, so he was able to take us on a tour. Now, of course, I wasn't able to film inside. There were actually some members of Parliament that were seated. They were, I can't remember the word. They were talking in their chamber. They were in session. I can't remember the terminology, but so we weren't allowed to film or anything, but it was really cool. And one thing I really enjoyed about my trip in Ottawa is learning a bit more about Canadian politics and Canadian government and a bit of Canadian history. During the tour, we saw all these portraits that once prime ministers have finished their time as prime minister, they get their picture painted by an artist of their choice and they get hung up all over Parliament. And it was cool to just walk and see the Canadian prime ministers over time, and even just seeing how they looked and how they've changed throughout time, like different facial hair, and just, you know, seeing what artists they chose to do their painting. And it was quite interesting. And we got taken into this room where they had all these books that have all the names of soldiers who died during all the wars that Canada has participated in or been a part of. And it was really interesting to learn that each day the pages, someone comes in and there's like a little ceremony and they turn the page of each book so that each person's name gets read by people every single day. And I just thought that was so interesting and such an honor for those who have served for their country. We also got to sit in the House of Commons, and we got to see some politicians and the speaker, and they were discussing a matter, and it was really cool to hear that and be a part of that and to see that. And I really enjoyed it. I feel like it was way more interesting than when I took my government class back in school. But one thing that my friend and I were talking about is it kind of feels like a full circle moment that I got to go to Ottawa, because it is Canada's capital, and it just felt kind of like I got to experience the capital of Canada, where a lot of things happen. And even though we're leaving in 5 weeks, it was really cool to have that experience and to learn a little bit more about Canada's history. So I'm so grateful that I had that experience. The weather was, honestly, I was expecting it to be a lot colder. Everyone always talks about how that side of that part of Canada is always very cold, and it does. My friend did tell me that the week before it got to -31, but when I was there, it was about, -1, and it was like a different kind of cold. Like in Vancouver, it's a very wet cold. It's most of the time it's raining, so you're already wet and it's cold outside and it just feels like you feel gross. But in Ottawa, it was more of a dry cold because it doesn't really rain as much. So while it does feel colder, you're not like unbearably freezing. Like I was walking around at times without my mittens on because my fingers weren't numb and cold like they would have been here. So that was cool to experience a more dry cold. So I had a really great time in Ottawa. It was very short and sweet, but definitely lots of memories made. And I'm just, really grateful for that experience, and to see another part of Canada before I leave, and to learn a little bit more about Canadian history before I leave, because I have lived here for 7 years. And another thing that I thought was so cool is my husband's actually never been to Ottawa or to that side of Canada. So it's kind of neat that I have a Canadian experience that he hasn't yet had. So that was really fun, and I just wanted to document a little bit of it. So yeah, not too many clips to show, but just to plop on my channel to document. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.